At least that's got some stuff that you're like, maybe.
A lot of fun stories with
There's
the
a lot of
Hollow Earth.
caves.
Yeah, tons of caves. We should do an episode on... No, I'm going to cut that out. But we should do an episode on caves. Scott, cut that out so no one does an episode. Keep Beliefful from doing an episode on caves.
We're going to go into some caves in this episode.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, that's a really long roundabout way of saying, welcome to Giants Part 2. Pew, 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 pew. We'll see you on the inside. You are now entering the realm of the Freaky Deaky, an unsuspecting stop at the crossroads of fantasy and reality, where the frayed edges of make-believe seep into this cookie-cutter, white picket world you've been led to believe is far from extraordinary. What you're about to hear are true stories.
Alleged true stories.
Christian, just... Okay? Tales of the strange and inexplicable thought only to exist in film and folklore. Although difficult to accept, we do not know everything about this reality, about time or space, what lies beneath the ocean's depths. And try though we might, the unchanging truth remains. There are some things we legitimately cannot explain logically.
Before we started recording, I asked you if you'd ever heard of the Giants of Solomon Islands.
Mm-hmm. And I said, yes, I'm very well versed on this.
That is not what he said. I don't think he's well versed because I don't even think he's read the episode yet. But
no, I have not.
Basically, you're like the name wasn't familiar with you.
Well, the name Solomon is very familiar with me, but I wasn't aware of Solomon Island Giants. No. Okay.
Well, the Solomon Islands is also a major battle place during World War II, which is probably where we all have heard from it. We're going to talk about giants today. What do you think of that?
I'm very excited for that. We haven't talked about giants since episode 3 of season 1.
And it's like Scott's favorite thing.
Yeah, it is one of my favorite things. If you haven't listened to the first episode, go listen to what the show was like at episode 3 of season 1 and report back and let me know if it's very different because I haven't listened to it in a very long time.
Yeah. And I texted this to you. I think I am going to take on the task of proving that giants could have been real.
Yeah, and I can't wait to use the meme that I have lined up for this.
I think I can prove it from a skeptical point of view. Not for sure, but I can put enough of a thought or a doubt into it to say that, a skeptical doubt or doubt for the skeptics. You know what I'm trying to say, even if I don't. I think I can prove that there's a possibility that there could have been giants.
Are you going to do all this without any kind of biblical text? Is there going to be a lot of arguing in this episode?
No, this is not. This is just one episode of a project I'm taking on. So, we won't wait till the end of season 2 to touch on this again.
End of season 3.
End of season 3.
Yeah.
To touch on this again.
We're very close to the end of season 2.
Yeah. So we won't wait till the end of the season to get back to giants. But I have a theory, and I'm going to try to prove the existence of giants.
Dramatic music, piano chord strike.
Okay.
That's cool.
Now you can do stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess welcome back to the Freaky Deaky. It's been a while.
Stop. No, man. And then he did something bad in the media too. So no more of him.
Yeah.
You need another song.
It's been a while.
Don't tempt me with that because I could pull up far weirder songs. Yeah. Welcome back to the Freaky Deaky. Hope you guys are having a great week. If you're not, sorry about it. But Friday's almost here. It's right around the corner. Within 24 hours of you listening to this, no, I'm going to scratch that. It could be Thursday when you're listening to this.
Yeah.
The following week. You know what? Let's start again. Welcome back to the Freaky Deaky. How many times do I have to introduce episodes these days, Christian? 20? One of these is going to land. Today we're going to be talking about giants.
We are.
Yeah. And I already mentioned that it's been a really long time since we talked about giants. So what I'm going to do right now is remind you that you can find us on social media. And I know we all hate social media. It is the very downfall of our civilization in many ways, or at least the overlords that run it are. But we try to bring a little bit of that light to social media.
Do we blame those people?
We do.
For our weaknesses?
We do. And we're not going to push it any further. We're not going to take a tangent this early in the episode.
No, man.
We can't do it.
I don't think so. I don't think we should. If
you justify Mark Zuckerberg right now, I am going to scream, Christian.
I am not going to justify anything. I'm saying is we do enjoy this.
So you
stuff
can find
deep
us.
down.
You can find us on social media at Freaky Deaky Pod on Facebook and Instagram. Chime in the conversation. Where Christian's always posting over on Facebook. I'm posting on Instagram. I do memes every Friday. Christian posts some fire memes on Facebook throughout the week. So
they are not made by me, unlike Scott's memes.
Yeah, my memes are very tailor-made for this podcast.
Yeah.
But also, just fire material in general, and I'll probably spice it up every once in a while myself. But no, so if you need a little like midweek pick me up, head on over to the Freaky Deaky on Facebook. Find at Freaky Deaky Pod on Facebook. Like it, subscribe to the YouTube channel, do all that fun stuff. Join in the conversation. We're always talking about the stuff. We love hearing from you guys. If you're on TikTok, at TFD Paranormal is where you can find us. If you have a freaky story of your own that you'd like to contribute and add it into the archives, the Freaky Deaky archives, you can do that by submitting it to the gang at thefreakydeaky.com, or you can be like the absolute legend who left us a voicemail a week or so back, a couple weeks back at this point. Let's say a month, just to be safe, at 801-997-0051. And you can leave a message up to about 3 minutes or so. So to your heart's delight, whatever you want to say, if you have some corrections or something to an episode, or you have a different take on an episode, we'll put that into a little video graphic and we'll throw that on Instagram. Or
if you want to just tell me to keep doing God's work, you can put that on the voicemail too.
Yeah, you can say that too. And if you don't know what he's talking about, again, you'll find that at social medias, but we're not going to touch on it a third time, a fourth time.
I might.
A fifth time? What are we doing here?
You'll probably hear about it next season too.
Yeah, on the Freaky Deaky. Coming up on... No, that's Believeful, sorry. Anyway, let's dive into Giants. It's been too long since we talked Giants. Christian, let's get started.
All right, so first I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Solomon Islands, and we're going to borrow some Wikipedia from it, because that's pretty simple. So from Wikipedia...
You said Wikipedia?
Wikipedia.
I
said that the first time.
Sometimes
you can go back and listen.
I will.
I said it right
30 more times. Yeah. Okay. So from Wikipedia.
Solomon Islands is a sovereign country consisting of 6 major islands and over 900 smaller islands in Oceania. To the east of Papua New Guinea, and northwest of Vanuatu.
Papua New Guinea.
To the east of Papua New Guinea. It's Papua.
I think it's not pronounced Papa.
No.
Are you sure? Is that just a white thing? Is that a white person thing?
It might be, man.
Am I Caucasian?
I learned Papua.
Papua.
You're going to look this up, and one of us is going to look bad.
Well, I'm looking at it right now, and there's a U in there, so Papua sounds familiar, but I always just thought it was pronounced Papa.
It would be Papa if it didn't have the U.
Yeah. Well, just to be safe, call it Daddy New Guinea.
That doesn't sound safe, man.
To the east of Daddy New Guinea.
Oh, gross.
It's Papua New Guinea.
Okay.
And northwest of Vanuatu, which I could be butchering, so I apologize. Any of the names that come across here might be butchered.
Okay,
and we apologize ahead of time.
So the Papa gets a wah.
Papua don't preach.
Okay, pop. You know what? Let's continue. I don't even have the mental capacity to forge forward with this one.
I don't blame you. It has a land area of 28,400 square kilometers, or about 11,000 square miles, and a population of 652,858 people. Honiara is located on the largest island of Guadalcanal, and that is the capital.
Okay.
The isle. This part is crazy. The islands have been settled since at least sometime between 30,000 and 28,800 BCE. That is nuts. Those islands have had people on them for a long time.
Yeah. Do they have like the lease agreements and whatnot from back then? Or
they
is
do.
It just,
and the bones.
So it's like written on a tablet or something like that?
Yep.
Okay.
Riddled with ancient DNA.
Yeah.
In 1568, the Spanish navigator Alvaro de Mendaña. He was the first European to visit them, naming them the Islas Solomon, I think is how you say it. Do you have a better way of saying it?
No, I don't.
Okay. The official name of the then British administration was changed from the British Solomon Islands Protectorate to the Solomon Islands in 1975, and self-government was achieved the following year. Independence was obtained, and the name was changed to just Solomon Islands in 1978. At independence, Solomon Islands became a constitutional monarchy. The Queen of the Solomon Islands is Elizabeth II, represented by the Governor General. It's kind of weird to see, like in 1978, and even now, that the Queen of England is queen of different places that used to be part of their world dominion type thing.
Do you think those people even get visits from England or anything like that? Or do you think they're just like, they're not the queen?
Just recently I read, and I didn't read the article, I read the headlines, that
they get taxed.
The prince and the princess went to some island, and then they left, and then all of a sudden the people are like, we want to get rid of we don't want the queen to be representative of our island anymore.
Yeah. Like, we're done with all that. Yeah.
And this was just in the last like month or so, probably, a little bit longer, but when this comes out.
It's pretty hilarious.
So.
And that's the end of the episode, everyone. Thanks
okay, here we go. I know where I'm at now. In 1568, the Spanish navigator, what was his name, Scott?
Alvaro de Mandana
was the first European to visit the Solomon Islands. I think we said this, the Solomon Islands archipelago, naming it Solomon Islands, but in Spanish, after the wealthy biblical king Solomon. It is said that they were given this name in the mistaken assumption that they contained great riches, and he believed them to be the Bible-mentioned city of Ophir. So, just to give you, it does go back to the Bible in a weird connection.
Yeah, it's weird hearing you mention the Bible without bursting into flames.
I mean, you act like that's a bad thing, but it keeps us warm when it's in the winter in the podcast studio when I burst into flames.
Sure does, but damn, does it derail stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. For this episode, I used the book Solomon Island Mysteries, Accounts of Giants and UFOs in the Solomon Islands, written by Marius Borean. He's a former soldier in Australia who married a Guadalcanal woman. And Guadalcanal is maybe familiar because that was like the big battle in World War II, the Battle of Guadalcanal. But it's actually a city or town or an island that's part of the Solomon Islands.
Gotcha.
This and the fact that he had some money in comparison to the people of the island helped him when it came to locals speaking to him.
That would do the trick. Grease the wheels a little bit.
Yeah.
Hey, you like money?
Yeah. Well, he was able to buy stuff, and everybody was friendly, so he'd have a lot of like parties at his house.
Nice.
So
same, but I didn't.
Yeah. Aside from the UFOs, which we will talk about in a summer break episode, he found that everyone knew of the giants on the island of Guadalcanal. He found it ironic that these people called their undiscovered to the modern world humanoids giants, since this is what the Bible and other books have called them. He said that the giants were similar to the well-known Sasquatch, Bigfoot, and Yowie that are found in the other parts of the world. The giants are known to build structures out of timber and large leaves that are in the area. They also reside in a large cave system that spans the entire island. Many have a social structure that we might find familiar, including cities that are found under the mountains. Mount Chitava is one of the entrances to their cities. The author states that these entrances are not only on Guadalcanal, but can be found on many of the Solomon Islands and also Papua New Guinea and Vanuatu. I'll say that again. There are 3 different species of giants. The most common interactions occur with the largest of them. They are 10 feet tall and are known to be even larger. Their hair is long, black, or reddish, and sometimes a mixture of these colors.
And do they have 6 fingers and toes?
No.
You sure?
That is not mentioned.
Red hair, though. That's a very interesting... It's always interesting how it comes back to that.
Yeah, especially in that part of the world where it's normally dark hair.
Yeah.
When they want to have a closer look, they use their hands to move the hair covering their face, displaying their red eyes. Could you imagine that?
Albino giants? No.
No, like a giant that's hair is so long, it's like in front of their eyes and they have to move it out of the way to look at you when they really want to look at you.
So how would they see otherwise?
I mean,
just kind of blurry.
How do emo kids see?
Well, let me answer that. As a former emo kid, I would always have one eye uncovered. One had to be covering, the left eye. Then the right eye became my dominant eye. And that's what I saw most of the world through.
But if we see like animals that have long hair in front of their faces, they still see. But it makes sense like you would.
True. Hair is technically fine enough that your eye could probably perceive through like
yeah. There's a protection
sense.
Reason why you would have hair in front of your face in the animal world anyway. So that's maybe more important.
Yeah.
Maybe at that point you have better hearing or, sense of smell.
Look, we always have hair in front of our eyes because we got eyelashes. Okay. And they keep dust from getting in there.
Yeah. Similar. It's an evolutionary.
Yeah. That evolutionary thing. Definitely not created.
A smaller version that is still larger than a human is called the wild man of the jungle by the residents.
Okay.
They do not tend to live in caves as they seem to be lower in the social hierarchy. When the smaller giants are seen, men attempt to kill them.
Classic.
Yeah.
Smaller giants, as in humans, or like
7 foot tall.
Oh.
Well, probably at this time, 6 foot tall would be a smaller giant. Because
I'm almost a smaller giant. You're almost a smaller giant.
Yeah. But depending on the time, this is long ago, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, they're talking about modern times too. So probably like 7-8 feet.
So I'm definitely not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So I can't necessarily say I'm about 1 inch shy of being the 6 foot smaller giant.
Yeah.
So
the giants of Papua New Guinea are known as Tambaran.
Thought we were saying Daddy New Guinea, but all right.
Do you have any comments so far before I keep going on, or do you want me to keep going?
No, it's funny seeing all the different cultures that have the exact same thing in the area and just call it something different.
That's what I found was when I was looking for different things to talk about. And then I came across this story and I'm like, this is a weird area to hear about giants.
But is it though?
It kind of is, because we don't normally get stories from this part of the world anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, we get a lot of stuff from like Australia and New Zealand, which is, I believe, southeast to the southwest of them.
Get a lot in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Get a lot in the Middle East.
Different parts of Asia, but we don't get normally things from these island areas.
Yeah, you get a lot in America. There's a lot. I don't know, man. The thing about, and probably why it's one of the most fascinating topics, is that it's such a wealth of information that you have to dig through. Like there's so many possibilities, and it's so deep and so wide. They're like, damn, where does this originate? Like, how did this all come to be, and how are we not seeing them about right now? You know,
we're gonna get really deep with this one, and this book is written from a guy that just did this probably, or was on these islands, I believe, in the last 40 years. Not 4 years, 40 years.
Yeah.
I think he wrote about this the book was written sometime in the 2000s. So he was there prior to that. And he's talking about some of this stuff still being there, and he still goes back.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. So I'll go on. Gold is found on the Solomon Islands. So in 1998, a mine was being built at Goldridge. So that's pretty recent. A large bulldozer with a 10-ton blade was brought in, but a pin broke. The men dropped the blade so that they could take the dozer back to camp and get it fixed. When they came back the next day, the large blade was gone. They began a search, not knowing how this could have been moved without the dozer. After some searching, they found large footprints that were 3 to 4 foot in length. Someone called out from a nearby hill saying they found it. Further examination of the footprints showed that it was thrown 100 meters onto this hill. Funny thing is, the mine has still not been used. It is said to contain 20 billion Australian dollars of gold at this location, but for some reason, it still hasn't been built.
So what you're saying is we need to go to Australia and find this gold, or do we have to mine this gold?
It has to mine the gold. Yeah, it has to be mined.
And I imagine it's a little more difficult than mining Bitcoin or something like that. I can't just set up a pretty fancy gaming laptop and be like, all right, let's go to town on this.
No, you need a bulldozer to begin with a 10-ton blade.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily that guy. I don't have access to those kind of connects,
But whoever was setting up this mine, they had this experience where these giants threw this blade up onto a hill that were strong enough, whose feet were 3 to 4 feet long.
Yeah.
Has decided not to finish that mine. Why? Could it be giants?
Were they scared, or was it like, oh, we can't even get up there to get the damn thing?
They could drive up there and get it. It was just a hill, and it's really not that far for a bulldozer. But the fact that it got moved that far, whether it was thrown or carried,
still, men
can't do that.
Yeah. At least they found it. Like, what happens if they're like, this thing's just missing? And somewhere in the wilderness, you have a giant wielding a very large sword to him.
I think it would be,
or knife.
I think by finding it, it's more believable, because then you would be like, okay, somebody came in here. Who knows? Because a helicopter maybe could come in there, a really strong one, and take it out of there.
Yeah, and land with like weird landing footprints.
Yeah. But when you add the footprints and it's up this hill over here, and you're on the edge of one of the things that I probably didn't mention it here, or I didn't mention it here. This is on the edge of known giant territory, was where this mine is.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I wish, dude. Okay, but this is 1998. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me, maybe you cover it, and stop me if you're covering it at some point. If there's giants this big, right, still walking the earth right now, where are they hiding? Where's their home? Is it the cave systems? Is it because that's the story of the giant of Kandahar is pretty much the caves of Afghanistan, right?
Right.
So why would the giants, like that's, and you can take it in a bunch of different ways, religion, whatever. Why would the giants suddenly go from being immensely feared to being cave dwellers? It's just because like we outnumbered them, or did we actually win the battle against these giants?
Most things that dwell in caves are absolutely feared.
Monsters.
I mean, even animals that are like bears love caves, and they will, not mountain lions, but different feline species that are, will live in caves, and it's dangerous.
Yeah, but caves, that just seems like if you come across a cave and you live in the wilderness, that seems like a smart play. I don't know if it's necessarily like terrifying things exist in caves. Or are you saying because you have to think, if you're an animal and you're in a cave, it's that you thought this was a great place? Like the
type of animal that could live in a cave and that chooses to a lot of times is dangerous to us even now. So a giant living in a cave would make sense why throughout human history we have stories of how dangerous caves are. Because whether it was a wild animal or in many cases giants in those caves, you didn't mess with those caves.
Man, we got to find some caves in Alaska. I know you just finished your sentence by saying you don't mess with those caves, and then like the first thought in that's why instantly your boy's getting murdered first in the crazy monster flick. It's not going to be happy. But the curiosity in me, man, it's like if I see a cave, I'm going to be, number one, terrified just right off the bat. Not going to have to see anything in it. I'm like, oh shit, cave. Because my mind's going to be like, hey, not going to be paranormal in nature, but 10 foot inside that cave, you're going to find a sleeping bear, and the bear's going to want to kill you.
Yep.
And he's hungry. And he's going to say, ooh, my snack just came.
And according to this story, it could be worse than a bear that you might walk into.
Exactly. But God, the curiosity, man.
Yeah. Monkeys are curious.
Yeah, they are. And I also am as well. So interesting. Yeah. We share that.
I'll let you read a little bit if you want. Or do you want me to keep reading? I'm good either way.
Yeah, you can keep going.
Okay. I know this story, so maybe it's good that I read it and then you like just come up with crazy shit.
Yeah. I'm just the hype man for the episode.
Yep.
But I do want to take a moment to just think back on the first time we talked about giants, where you were so adamantly against it.
I'm still against your giants.
You're against the theory of my giants, but you're on board with the idea of giants.
Yeah.
So you've made probably the biggest step you can take in the belief of giants.
I'm on board the giants, that they might be giants.
Is that a reference to a band?
Yeah.
Is that, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Let me go on.
Yeah, continue, please.
Like a blister in the sun.
Is that a They Might Be Giants song? I've never listened to the band.
Yeah.
I just assumed it was. Yeah. Okay, there you go.
The Malaysian they're the same species as the Guadalcanal giants. But Sylvester Stallone later heard about them.
The Rambos.
Yeah. The Malaysian Ramo were said to use huge subi, I don't know how it's said, but subi, which is a 10 to 15 foot diamond sharpened timber sword style weapon.
Nice.
The humans in this area were said to carry a smaller version of the weapon in the past. They are now found as decorations in the homes of some residents. Have you ever heard of like the gigantic swords? I think they have them in Japan.
Not the gigantic swords, but I've heard about I forget who's that guy. Someone will correct me. I was watching a series, and this guy was talking about the weight of the spear tip and like the old Middle East and shit, like the biblical giant story and stuff like that. Like the weight of this spear tip was tremendous.
Impossible for humans to use effectively.
And to be able to throw something like that at any kind of distance, it's impossible.
I believe in Japan, I think it's Japan, they have these ancient swords that are so huge that either they were a decoration for some kind of maybe religious ceremony or something, or they were actually from giants, because no human could have ever wielded them.
Yeah. Well, so I would imagine like decorative swords wouldn't be built with the same, gusto that a real weapon would be.
Yeah.
built,
this
right?
one could have been a weapon.
Yeah.
Back in this time, even that big.
Yeah.
And sure, people could have built them as decorations or homage to their gods of the region. But also, if something used them, it was only a giant.
Yeah.
I mean, because nothing else could have used that.
Could you, like, I know that they're technically very old, but could you, with the DNA evidence today, would you be able to find any traces of like blood or body fluid on something like that? I don't
think they did in this, but if they did find weapons, they could, if it was preserved properly,
which over that period of time would be next to impossible, I imagine.
Not next to impossible, because as we're talking, and I think we've talked about it on an early episode of the podcast, where things that were found in caves they can do a test on the soil and find out what lived in that cave based on the DNA in that soil. So you can find ancient humans, Neanderthals, bears,
cave dwelling troglodytes.
Yeah, whatever that.
I think it's just
troglodytes.
Troglodytes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that's just cavemen, right?
Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay, you're right. And and they've found saber-toothed tigers in these, and they can tell they were there only by the soil and how deep, also by how deep the soil is with this DNA. They can judge how long ago that time was.
Oh yeah, that checks out.
Yeah. So, and we've argued about it a million times, and Scott is always wrong.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to take this podcast in a 20-minute tangent, so I'm not falling for your traps anymore. Sure, Christian, the soil samples.
Everybody knows your theory. We don't have to state it anymore.
Exactly,
and they know my theory about this stuff.
You know how we both feel about this.
Yeah.
Stop trying to egg us on, listeners. How dare you?
Yeah. All right. So the Rambos.
The
Rambos would also raid villages of the militia, sometimes killing dozens of men with one swipe of their weapon.
That checks out.
Yeah. Some wore colored ring bands around their biceps. They would also wear loincloths, which were woven by the female giants.
Oh, hey.
But many were naked and murderous.
Yeah, well, number one, who's to say you can't be gigantic and fashionable? Okay. So if you want to wear colored ribbons or whatever around your biceps, more power to you.
Yeah.
Let it glisten in the hot sun while you're taking out an entire country of humans.
Wait, I mean, when you think about where kings got their beliefs, they got them supposedly from giants in these different regions of the world. And they were copying with their dress and ornateness and their weapons what the giants were doing when the giants used to rule over things, as the various tales go throughout different parts of the world. They're very similar.
Gotcha. Centuries ago. Centuries ago.
Okay, yeah, good. Centuries ago, when the giants were still cannibalizing the locals.
The locals.
Locals. Yeah, that too.
They're out there cannibalizing the locals.
Amen.
Essay. No, that's fine. It's cool. I'm not trying to get racist on this podcast.
Yeah, I don't even,
Is it racist if you make fun of, everyone makes fun of everything. Can we get back to making fun of everyone? Can we do it? No, probably not. I'm not going to get on that soapbox right now.
You know
Let's get back to giants.
Are you trying to get slapped? That's all I'm saying.
Probably. That's a shout out to something that happened a month and a half ago. Will Smith, Chris Rock.
Yeah. Okay. So centuries ago, when the giants were still cannibalizing the locals, the villagers were placed along the coast with 24-hour guards that would beat drums to warn of approaching giants.
You know what's crazy about the cannibalizing? That's what the giants in the Bible were cannibals too.
I know.
It's freaky, man.
It is freaky.
It's because that means that there's even more, even if you don't believe the Bible, if something was written and it's in there from real stories and it was cannibalized, dude, fuck all that. Okay.
My belief is that story in the Bible is ancient at that point. By time it's put in the Bible.
Yeah.
It's comes from a long time ago. And obviously, according to this story, it's still going on up until this cannibal. We'll get to it later in this episode, but there is a time period where they stopped doing this.
Yeah.
And it's within the last couple 100 years. So it's not that long ago.
Yeah, we won. Shout out humans. We did it.
No, we did not win.
I guess we didn't win. Never mind.
It was an agreement.
Okay. You think they're just shaking tiny hand to giant hand back? Okay, we agree now. You live in the caves and you be scary and we'll keep all the land out here. Deal? And they're like, yeah, deal, okay.
Stay tuned. But
Okay.
wait, there's more.
Okay.
A traditional story is told of a young Ramo who would sit in a large tree watching a village. The warriors used their bows but could not dislodge the giant. Since he was young and not very strong, he did not dare take on the warriors. The women of the village would not go to their gardens out of fear. And after a while, the village became complacent. But one day the young Ramo was gone. The women got some guards and went to journey to their gardens finally. But the giant had anticipated this and sprung from the jungle, grabbing 2 women, and was fast and agile enough to escape with his meal.
Yeah, who wouldn't think that? Who would be like, oh, maybe he got smart enough to just be like, oh, I'm going to make it seem like I left. That's rule number 1. Someone's behind a door and you're like, fine, I guess I'll just leave without you. What do? You stomp on the ground around the door and be like, I'm leaving now. You can't hear me because I'm walking away. You know?
I mean,
it's grade school stuff.
Also animal stuff.
Also, apparently cannibal stuff.
Yeah.
So not fun either way.
And, you think back to this time period and whatever was in those gardens, the people of the village must have had to have, because that's the only way you would take that chance. And they brought guards, but this thing was just ran by and grabbed two of them and disappeared into the jungle with them.
Yeah. I can't imagine, like, what would a giant need with garden stuff, like with veggies? A cannibal giant.
This young giant knew that's where the women went. And the women, I guess, if they didn't take their guards, which probably in this situation until they saw a giant, wouldn't need guards.
No reason to.
Yeah. And this one was a real giant would have just ran back home. But this young giant wasn't ballsy enough to go and just grab him. He had to wait for the perfect opportunity. So he set it up.
Yeah. Well, okay.
In the area, on a mountain, a great and powerful giant is said to be buried. There are walls with hieroglyphics and pottery that has been found in this area. And the best way to get there is by bribing the locals and hiring a helicopter. So,
I was still back in the day of the giants. I'm like, wait, they got a helicopter back then? But I'm back in the future.
To be able to get to this mountain where there's a giant is supposed to be buried, there's a wall and some form of hieroglyphics. So the giant's writing hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
At some point.
Interesting. Says a lot about Egypt as well. But is there any correlation between the drawings of these hieroglyphics between cultures, or is it just
hieroglyphics are just basically
pictures?
Yeah, and different cultures have used them.
But is there a similar style? Is what I'm saying, as far as the image representation.
There probably is. I think I've seen similar symbols for the same thing in different areas that should not have the same symbol.
That would be interesting.
According to history or whatever, these areas should not have communicated.
Yeah.
But somehow they did.
Yeah.
Or there was that telepathic thing going on. But it's a really strange thing, and nobody can figure out how they got the same symbol for the same word or same thing.
That goes with language as well. Which could be a random coincidence. It could be about a big tower and giants as well. It could be about a lot of different stuff.
My theory is some of these things came from the same region a long time ago that we have not admitted existed in human history.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I actually had a story I wanted to do, but I don't know if you'd be down with it, and it would probably take me forever because it's something that I'm not the most focused person. So coming up with that type of story, and it's number one, based off something that if I were to get it wrong, I'd be sacrilegious. But I can't remember the guy's name right now, but pretty much the king of the giants, the main giant or something like that. And tying in with the tower of apparently Babel or anything like that. Is that
Nebuchadnezzar?
I'm not sure if it was Nebuchadnezzar, but pretty much him being the creator of cities, the main builder of cities and all this shit, and being possibly a giant, which it's a lot of strings to attach, but I got a really boring old book that might help me connect some points if I get around to it at some point. But that could be another giant episode. There's so many giant episodes. We should actually just spin this off into another podcast and say they definitely are giants. Not they might be giants, but
we may do that at some point.
TDA giant. Yeah. TDAG.
When we can afford to get that song as our intro.
There you go.
Or a song of theirs. We're going to go back to Guadalcanal.
Let's do it.
So another example of giants on Guadalcanal is from the premier of the island and a bishop named Victor. Premier is obviously one of the leaders of the island politically.
Victor.
And the bishop, it's Catholic there now. So the bishop is a Catholic bishop.
Named Victor?
Yeah.
I guess maybe.
I don't know if he came from the island originally or whatever. But
yeah.
They had decided to go check out the Gold Ridge mine where the heavy rains which is the mine we were talking about earlier. When the heavy rains, because they hadn't been paying attention to the weather, caused their Toyota truck to slide off the road. They had to walk back to the last village. They had to walk back to the last village they passed to get help. And they had about 30 men follow them back up to the truck to help bring it to the muddy road, or back onto the muddy road. When they came around the corner, two giants were standing near the truck, and they had lifted it up and put it back on the road.
Weird.
Of course, the men initially ran away screaming, and about 30 minutes later, they worked up the courage to come back. When the author spoke with the premier, he was told the tallest of the giants was 15 foot tall, and that both had put 1 foot on the road and 1 foot next to the truck to put it back on the road, to lift it up to the back of the road. And again, there were footprints of 3 to 4 feet in length.
That's weird. Yeah, I've never heard that story.
This is another recent story.
Yeah.
Because it's coming from around 2000.
That's so weird, man. It freaks me out a little. Like, it's a really fascinating thing to think about, but it's terrifying that you could just be like, you know, helping this bishop out, be like, yeah, I guess we'll go help you get your truck back. Then you're walking, you turn a corner, you're like, oh, holy shit, those people are 15 feet tall.
Yeah. But according to the author, anywhere you go on Solomon Island, you talk to people, they'll tell you about these giants.
Man, it kind of makes you want to go to Solomon Island.
Yeah.
A little bit.
And it's like not just like the stories go back to like their great grandparents told them stories or told their great grandparents were the ones that were telling stories about giants. And all these people still see giants. Some of those stories, especially oral traditions, great grandparents, you know, isn't that long ago.
No.
And it's easy to keep an oral tradition going, but that's like 100, 150 years ago.
Yeah.
So that is a long time ago, and they're seeing this. They got it from their great grandparents, which, you know, so this is going back a long time. Another thing about the Solomon Islands, they're kind of, you know, separated now by water. But you go back to the last ice age, some of these islands were connected at that point because the water, you know, level was so far lower. And, you know, so at some point in the vast distance through the different ice ages, these islands like the Bering, you know, land bridge that attached Asia to Alaska would have been connected. And 11,000 years ago is not that long ago.
No.
So.
No, it's not that long ago. It's long ago.
I mean,
for
it's
us,
long for us, but yeah.
Oh, hell, 10 years ago feels like last week. So, I mean, maybe it's not.
Now we get to the story that may remind you of our YouTube video. 2 girls from Lytton kidnapped by giants. You ready? On Guadalcanal and other Solomon Islands, the story of Mango is well known.
Yes, I too have many stories of Mango.
Don't we all? She passed away in 2000, and she had been kidnapped by giants 50 years ago and spent around 25 years with them.
That's a very long time.
Yeah. Everyone had figured that she was dead. That was until they found her pregnant and frothing at the mouth in a garden.
Wait a second. Something is wrong with these proportions, man. It's really hard for me to follow this one. And I can't really talk about it because we mentioned that children listen to the podcast now, or like kids of certain age, but there's like,
you don't have to get graphic. Okay. So the giant got this lady pregnant.
Yeah. Proportions my mind is struggling to understand proportions. You know what I mean?
But you don't have to, because not all of these giants were 15 feet tall. Some were 7 feet.
Okay. So maybe, yeah. Okay. So, and Shaq could get someone pregnant.
Yeah.
If he really wanted to.
Yeah. Not that Shaq's a giant, but as a human, he's a giant.
Yeah.
So
I was talking proproportions. So
I know. Let it go, man.
Okay.
It's possible.
Yeah. But if you think about the fact that Shaq was like, never mind. We're going to move on.
You ever heard of virgin birth?
I have. Yeah.
Okay. If that's possible, this is possible.
Then, yeah. And biblically speaking, the fallen angels technically corrupted women as well. Right. So I get it.
Okay.
I get it.
This kind of fits with that a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. When we last left Mango, she was frothing at the mouth in the garden before Scott got really troubled.
Hey, who amongst us, you know?
Yeah. She was hysterical. And when the men tried to capture her, they found her skin slimy and slippery. They eventually did catch her. They grabbed some leaves that had rough edges on them. And I guess they were big leaves, and used those to kind of get past the slimy part.
Yeah.
We're not going to deal with why she got slimy. Okay. They never brought that up.
That was my next question.
She's in the jungle. Who knows?
Yeah. It could have been any number of things.
Yeah. Could have just been crawling amongst the weeds.
Definitely probably not that, but yeah sure.
No, I got lost.
It's easy too with this one. Too.
All right. So they eventually tied her up. We know that. A giant had taken her for a wife. So that's crazy as it is. And she would remain mentally unstable for the rest of her life after they captured her or after they found her again. But she did give birth to what was called a half-caste boy. The boy lived to be 5 years old before Mango's brothers killed him.
Shit.
Didn't the story just go from like, oh, giants, cool, to like, what the hell?
Yeah, but God, that 5-year-old was probably the size of these guys too.
Yeah. And remember, I told you earlier that they would kill the smaller giants.
Yeah.
And also, we know humans, they're like, okay, Mango's crazy. She's not paying attention. Let's just kill this thing now before he grows up. And, we've heard the stories about cannibals.
Yeah. You know what this actually reminds me of? Are you familiar with any of the stories of that have always been, kind of lauded as a, cuckoo story, but the women that have been kidnapped by Bigfoot?
Yeah. The Amazon Bigfoot stories, you can bleep out, but.
Well, I don't know if I've never personally typed that into.
No, nobody has, but there are actual news reports on these that I've seen pop up.
Yeah. I've heard like a few over, like, I think Sasquatch Chronicles has mentioned a couple where people have claimed to be kidnapped by Bigfoot or something like that. Or there was one that was like set to marry, pretty much like almost like a ceremony where it was like, yeah, you're going to marry this Bigfoot.
And now there's romance novels written about this.
Yeah, we're not going to dive into that either.
Yeah, let's not.
That's like the weird part of cryptid lore that you don't want to get into.
It's a human. Humans are weird.
Yeah, anything you can sexualize, you will sexualize.
Didn't they have something for that on? Isn't there a rule for that? Rule 30 or something?
Maybe. That kind of sounds. Yeah, that sounds like. Don't look that up. Yeah, definitely don't search that. Children, I swear to God, if you search that, I will find you.
You just need to bleep it out.
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
And now I'm just threatening children for no reason.
No, don't do that, man. No,
I will find you. That. No, and
let's get back to Mango.
Yeah, let's get back to Mango.
So they killed her son, her 5-year-old son, which is wrong no matter what species.
R.I.P.
I find it interesting they call him a half-caste boy, but so the story of a half-caste boy is not unique, but it is fascinating and scary that they can breed with humans. The author says that he knows of 2 half-caste women that can be found in northeast Guadalcanal. There are half-caste and quarter-caste men who are huge, and they have eighth caste children with Guadalcanal women.
And I hope that sums up the math portion of this episode, because anytime numbers are involved, it's just going to get weirder and weirder.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that
32nd cast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, there's a lot of kids related to these giants is what they're saying. Mm-hmm. He says that everybody knows about these interspecies people. One was named Silver, who died in the early 1990s. His son, Jenny or Genny.
Right, Jenny.
Yeah. Has a son and grandchildren that are still alive. Quarter caste Jenny can eat an entire pig, bone and all. He is also said to eat crocodiles.
Oh, okay.
In 2002, a scientist at the University of Papua New Guinea mapped the DNA of Melanesian peoples and found slight differences from that of other Homo sapiens. Could it be that the people in this region of the world have been interbreeding for thousands of years?
Gross.
Is it gross though?
Interbreeding? Yeah, a little bit.
Not if these other creatures basically are a different form of human that are just taller because they're giants.
Still pretty gross. I'm going to call it gross.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm going to sit on that one.
Okay. According to the telling of this change, it is also said that giants are both carnivorous and herbivorous. Remember that until recently, the giants looked upon humans as a food source. In the past, children were said to be pinned up like livestock, like pigs to be eaten. The giants would come into villages, ripping the limbs of the inhabitants off, and they would eat them and eat them right there while everyone else ran away terrified. That would be terrifying.
Yeah. No one's running away, filled with glee. Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
What a great day.
Now we come to the giant that is said to have taken humans off the menu, quote unquote off the menu. His name is Luti Mikode, who is said to be the chief of the giants. He was part of a giant war when others still had a taste for humans. So basically he was part of a war to stop giants from eating humans.
A very noble cause.
Yeah. According to the telling of this change, the extraterrestrials of the island might have had something to do with this. Or whatever it was, he went to war over it. This change took place only about 100 years ago. So they were eating humans up to 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Ludi is still alive because he met with a bishop that went to a secluded area for vacation. They discussed an ethnic war that was going on between humans during the year 2000. So around 2000, the different ethnicities of the Solomon Islands were fighting each other. Giants have a written language. Their dialect is The dialect their dialect is similar to a human's dialect.
Makes sense.
Yeah. This could show a related origin in some way. Some men practice gifting food like white pigs to the giants, and they have to be white, no stripes.
I don't know. I've never seen too many striped pigs, but
Have you seen white ones?
yeah, all over the place.
I got the idea that they were white, not pink.
Nice.
I don't know. So I guess they're like the furry ones would be white sometimes. The ones we eat aren't very furry.
Yeah, it sounds delicious.
Bacon. This seems to be an old practice that is carried through after Christianity came to the island. They also give them betel nut lime, which is ground freshwater snail shells.
Wow.
Through the years, the pigs of the island have learned to avoid paths walked by giants. The giants dig the swine. I don't know.
You really proud of that one, huh? Yeah, I could tell you're like waiting for a reaction of some kind.
I'm like, I don't know if I'm proud of it or it's really horrible, but it just had to go there.
The giants dig the swine. Good night, everyone.
No, we're still going, man. Yeah. Okay. During World War II, it's said the Japanese on the islands battled the giants and eventually deserted Guadalcanal because of this before the Allies landed on the beaches to take control. So the story goes that the Allies landed on the beaches expecting a normal fight with the Japanese soldiers that was brutal, and they'd all abandoned it because they'd been getting picked off by giants.
Wow. So they just came back with stories like, oh yeah, we really whooped their ass. It was easy.
No, I guess they admitted that it was there. The author says that the U.S.-backed Australians came to the island to calm the ethnic war, but he feels they came because of the UFOs and the giants, and then probably golden oil as well.
Yeah, topical.
Another fun fact that may have wider connections in history, Mumu is the islander name for the giants. Some believe that in the past, a large continent was in the area, and it was called Mu. You've heard of that, right? It's like the Asians' Atlantis. There was a giant continent off the coast of southern Asia called Mu. That was way advanced.
Yeah.
And then it disappeared in some catastrophe.
Is that why when humans have a muumuu, it's like a...
I think it comes from that area.
Interesting.
And maybe the giant women wore them. So they're like, that's just the muumuu. Okay. So there are also reports of small humanoids that stand about 4 feet tall. And this sounds fantastical, but in recent years, the remains of a small hobbit-like human relatives have been found in Indonesia. The Solomons call their hobbits chawa chawa, and one came into a camp, and its picture was taken after the locals dressed it in shorts.
Let's get a picture. Wait, first let's grab some. Do you have any shorts? Let's get some shorts on this guy.
I mean, they were obviously Catholic.
And were they nude? I imagine, the little short people.
Yeah.
So they're like, "Ooh, okay, cover that up. Let's get this guy in some shorts, and then we're gonna get some photography done with this guy."
Yeah,
that's really interesting. What do you think about the little people, the 4 feet tall people?
I mean, Indonesia's not that far, and it would have been at some point. You can imagine that they were close enough to where maybe the inhabitants of the Solomon Islands came from that part of Asia.
Yeah.
Because there might have been a not really a land bridge, but more land exposed during different ice ages. And if somebody could sail, they would have been close enough to sail to the further islands. And some people believe that's how people found South America from Asia instead of from Europe. Because there's evidence that shows that people were in South America maybe even 100,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And the only way they could have come was through that southern part of Asia. And then at that time, Antarctica wasn't cold.
Yeah.
And people could have traveled through there, and animals have seemingly traveled through that region to get to Australia. And then if you get to Australia from there, you can pop right up into where the Solomon Islands are now, Indonesia. And these hobbit-like creatures in Indonesia are related to humans, is what they believe or feel in one way or another, if you believe in evolution.
Yeah, and if you don't, you could say they were
demons,
elves. There's a lot of fairy lore. I don't know if in that neck of the woods you'd find a lot of fairy lore or that type of.
Well, it would go without saying, if you could find giants, you could also find little people.
Yeah. And then it's really easy to find the middle ground, which is the humans.
Yeah. And you would think that maybe there were different things in the ancient past moving around. We know there's Neanderthals out there. There's Denisovans and other kinds of animals that may or may not be part of the family tree.
Yeah.
But that were actually out there that are similar to us.
Sure.
So, and if a few of these could have mated like giants to humans.
Creepy, number one. But
and it could also explain some of the pictures we've seen of giants from different parts of the world. And were these people really just tall people, or were they actual giants?
Well, what's that? There's that, and I'm sure it's fake, but there's like a
Japanese,
like an old film footage where it shows like a
I think it's around World War I or II.
Maybe, but
I think it's World War II, maybe.
But the proportions of that giant that's like walking or whatever, it looks like almost like what a baby looks like. You know what I mean? Like the proportions of the head and the limbs and stuff looks like it's proportioned similar to a human baby.
It also looks proportioned similar to a sumo wrestler, and it's dressed like that. But I know which one you're talking about.
But I mean, do you know what I mean? Like with like adults, like when you grow up after being a child, like your limbs are longer, you're a little more stature to you. But this giant looked like just a really big baby that was walking, and obviously.
But could that have not been the case?
It could have been. I'm just saying, like, is that what? Because for me, I'm a very visual person, so it's hard for me to imagine giants and think they look like big babies. Like I want to picture like an adult male, like us, but like 15 feet high.
But if they're not part of our species, they may not look like an adult male.
Well, then that's going to freak me out when I come across one.
It's that one that we see in that video, which is actually if it's a fake, it's done pretty well.
For the period, yeah.
Because maybe it's easier to do a fake from that period because you got the black and white and the kind of choppy filming.
Yeah, so it's going to look.
But it does look, you're like, look at it and you look for the flaws. It's done well.
Yeah. As
well as you can in that film. And maybe that type of film makes it hard to be able to tell what's fake, but it's well done. And if we're talking about giants in the 2000s, then there could have been a modern giant in Japan at that time, because a lot of these islands is where Japan was going during that time. That's why we were fighting Japan in these islands, because that was a good strategic place to have during the war. So, and the Guadalcanal people on the island were actually sending signals to the Allies, which would have been the Americans, the Australians, and all that area.
Yeah.
And helping them figure out where different places to attack in the area during World War II was. All the time having stories about giants, including to the point where giants attacked Japanese World War II soldiers.
I mean, it is crazy to think like recent history with giants, like even hearing the giant of Kandahar and stuff, which is probably the most popular recent giant story, because that's within a handful of years.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I don't know. It's just nuts. It's kind of crazy to think about, because you do think, oh, well, I walk around every day. I never see anything outside the normal.
Yeah.
But then there's these places on Earth where like these stories are told, and not just like whimsically like, oh, yes, the giants of the region, like it's actually like more of like a warning, like, hey, be careful what you're doing out there.
Yeah. And all these people in these islands believe in these giants, and many have seen them. Cave tunnel system underneath the islands supposedly spans the entire island and also has connections to some other islands in the area.
Are these islands like technologically advanced?
No.
So like these people don't walk around with cell phones or anything?
Nope. They might now, but that's just a recent thing.
So, but
they didn't have modern internet. They don't have, a lot of modern things. Like to get that bulldozer there is a big thing.
But that wouldn't, at that point, we got to start asking, and I hate to ask this question, but where are the pictures going to be of giants in this region? Like if technology has hit and people do have cell phones a little more frequently now in these areas or something like that, everyone would have access to a phone again. So are we going to start seeing actual legitimate pictures of this type of shit in the future? Or is it one of those things where just randomly, like when technology hits and suddenly everyone's got cameras, now they don't want to show their face? Yeah.
And we're going to have to find a couple pictures from this region that supposedly came out of the region, including the small person with the shorts.
I'd go to that area. Like if we ever, let's get this show big enough to where we can just travel to these destinations we talk about and then just do episodes on it. Be like, hey,
but let me remind you before you go to an area like this, this doesn't have any modern amenities for the most part. To get to some of these areas, you either have to walk through a jungle or have a helicopter take you.
All right, so I'm out.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't mind visiting places that like, I don't know if I can handle walking deep into a jungle.
Yeah, I can handle a helicopter ride.
Yeah.
Maybe. Well, it depends on who's flying the thing.
With some, you know, tough boots that don't allow some of these bugs and snakes to crawl into your stuff.
Yeah.
And some guards that will take out any of the wild animals that might come your way, and hopefully could help slow down any giants that might come out. But the way it sounds like at this point now, since peace was made, they kind of have a coexistence, and sometimes they run across each other. Obviously, you know, we hear about cannibal giants, but then we also heard the story about the giants that helped get the car back on the road.
Yeah, that was an interesting turn.
Yeah. And then we, you know, the descendants of giants living amongst humans as humans. I think
it could be you or I right now.
Yeah, I think it opens up, if true, it opens up a new way of thinking. You know, because when you and I are talking about giants, you're talking biblical giants, the fallen angels. I'm talking about an actual species of something that could have lived in the past.
Yeah,
and if it did, it lived. You know, it came from a long time in the past, and if it's still around, that's an ancient species that's probably more ancient than us. And when you see the connections to other parts of society, maybe that's the Atlantean type people that we hear about, or, you know, the people that were in the United States prior to when the Europeans believed they could have been.
I don't know, but either way you slice it, man, these things could exist.
Yeah.
Is it biblical? Is it just normal, like person, like a kind of species or something like that?
I think they started as a normal species, but then when we got biblical, because of the effect they had on the population, it was really easy to put them in the Bible as kind of like these fallen angels, because who would have known at that time? They would seem like fallen angels. And maybe, you know, who knows how the story, but it makes perfect sense. If these creatures were there before humans, and were preying upon early humans to the point where they became part of our mythology and the things we warn our kids from.
Yeah, but that's what I'm talking about. Like that tangent from last episode, we were talking about Enoch and shit like that. Like that's, and if you didn't listen to the end of last episode after the outro music, that we're kind of discussing that for a little bit, but that's what I say. Like if you go through Enoch, like the origin story of giants and stuff like that is pretty much stems from that. Yeah. And that's what these would eventually turn into. And I remembered the giant that I was talking about earlier. It wasn't Nebuchadnezzar. It was Nimrod.
Okay.
Nimrod. And it's apparently Nimrod. And like the book is about Nimrod and his wife, but Nimrod is like apparently the guy that built Babel or Babylon, and was known as this like great city builder. It could actually be like apparently, or like legend has it that this is, or the first major city that was ever built was by Nimrod.
Okay.
And so humans, if anything, we're taking what Nimrod did, and we're like, you look at Los Angeles, and ironically, a lot of these big places are also, there's a lot of weird speculation of the things that happen in these big towns. So is it something that could carry on generation to generation after this? I don't know. But the story of Nimrod in general is just crazy fascinating, but it's a really deep subject that I'm not a deep person in general. I have deep thoughts from time to time, but in general, I'm just a goofy, ne'er-do-well. So for me to tackle a subject like this, it takes a very long time.
I believe that we have had civilization on this planet a lot longer than we admit. And a lot of times the Bible stories are based on something that was ancient during their time that they did not even experience, because that's how old it was. It was passed down to them, or these helpers or watchers were actually a decent part of society that gave them, or the Eternals in Marvel culture, where they helped humanity thousands and thousands of years before the time that we generally, which is in general, humans talk about, biblical times and the 5,000 years before it. But this is if this is in my belief or in the way I see things or evidence I'm starting to see, stuff goes back way farther than that.
Look, even like China and I have had discussions, because she's someone that time, obviously we've talked about, not just flat circle, but it's like a human construct.
Right.
Right. And so when you hear time spoken in the Bible, like in Genesis or something like that, where it's like on day 1, God did this, day 2, blah, blah, all that stuff, we put like, 1 day, 24 hours. God can accomplish a lot in a whole week, but like God is never like, and in 24 hours time, I did this. Like, so like China's under the impression that since they never mentioned how long a day was, that like it could have been thousands of years. It could have been this long, could have been this long. Like, but for me personally, I picture a day as sunrise, sunset. Like, so maybe it's not, I don't know how like I worded it exactly. It's not like, you know, our version of time, but it's not exactly thousands of years between. Personally, I think the earth is a lot newer than, you know, I can't say it's millions of years old. There's just, to me, the evidence doesn't add up to that. And granted, I'm not someone that has researched this shit for, you know, eons or like built upon any of that knowledge or anything. To me, it's just like, I've always been a common sense kind of person.
I want to, you say common sense. That is a homeschooling view.
To an extent, but I've met people who weren't homeschooled that share the same.
But that's wrong. I mean, there's evidence, plenty of evidence that it's older.
So
you can't have giants unless you have this older thing, because they didn't just spring. True. They didn't come to Earth 5,000 years ago.
No, but what I'm saying,
11,000.
The timetable, it adds up either way. You could have your timetable where you think it's millions of years and evolution and different species and all this.
I don't
shit.
even need to have evolution.
Okay,
there's millions of years. Maybe humans weren't there, and then God decided, okay, it's time for humans. But our view of linear time is wrong. So that would explain the differences in the Bible. That time period seems shorter because we have a human understanding of linear time, when a God's understanding of time is just unmeasurable for us.
Infinitely more complex. Yeah.
So that makes that, so either way, this earth could be really old and still be biblical.
It could. And like I said, I claim to know absolutely jack shit.
Yeah.
Because nobody does. In the grand scheme of things, nobody knows what actually happened. But for me personally, the stories of the Bible and shit, you can line that up. And I've read books where people have been like, this is what is talked about in school. This is what's talked about biblically. And then you find the gaps in time and periods and stuff like that. And you're like, when they were saying this is what the Bible said was going on. And when the Bible was saying this is what, you know, history teachers are saying was going on. And so like people that have actually gone and looked at both side by side and been like, this is what was claimed and this is what was claimed, but also they added in a couple things or they subtracted a couple things. Or
they took it from Babylon.
Whatever.
Because the Bible part is way after Babylon, way after Samaria.
But we've had these talks before. We
can argue about a million years.
Yeah.
But Babylon and Samaria, you know, is way before Bible times.
But you just say that, but like I said, it can go either way. If you look at a biblical timeline, you're looking at the creation, you're looking at like the quote unquote Garden of Eden, let's say.
You're going all biblical, and we're just talking giants.
No, we are, but that's what I'm saying. Like, we've had this exact discussion off the podcast before. Do you remember? It's probably been like 3 years or something since we talked.
I remember you were wrong.
No, you remember you stopped talking because I was right.
No, you cannot be right about a time period between the Bible and Samaria.
Look, what I was saying was I was lining everything up with creation to the building and the fall of the Tower of Babel, right?
There's no such thing.
You say that, but what I was saying is there is. And I say, let's just hypothetically say that there is a Tower of Babel, right?
Now, was it real? Okay, let's say there is.
Yeah.
Was it to get to God, or was it just a tall ass building?
If we're saying Nimrod is the builder of this thing, right?
I'm not saying that.
You're not. Let's just hop in a weird timeline, right?
Okay.
Let's say that Nimrod is the builder of this thing. Nimrod his entire thing is to reflect what God is doing. God created the entire heavens and the earth. Nimrod comes down. He is this fallen angel, right? Mm-hmm. And so pretty much the opposite of what God's doing, he's trying to do on earth. And so it's, oh, you do that, I can do this too. And so he's building up this giant city, right? And when he gets to the heavens, it's almost like a smack in God's face. Like, you think you're so special, I can do the same thing. And so he's building this giant tower. And when God is like, never mind, this might get a little dicey. So he splits everyone up. Everyone's language changes, right? That's where we all travel to different, I know you want to cut in right now, but that's where we all travel to different sides of the globe. That's why we get where language is so similar to each other. That's why we get stuff where the hieroglyphics we talked about are so similar to each other, or there's similarities that shouldn't be there, but somehow they are. It's that we were all once speaking the same language and we split up.
Why would God be so cruel to split up our human family?
I'm saying Nephilim in general, right? Which I believe.
Or giants.
Yes.
Nephilim. You call them Nephilim. I call them giants.
No, I'm not saying that Nephilim are 100% all giants. I'm saying that the Nephilim or the giants came from the Nephilim. Nephilim were fallen angels that came down, mated with women, which again, proportions freaks me out. But from that, you get giant races, stuff like that. So it's from the people that actually fell, allegedly. I'm not saying this is definitively, but I'm saying the timeline for me tracks out. And I know you say, oh, that's a homeschool way of thinking, but guess what?
Göbekli Tepe.
What about it?
That is older than any of the biblical stuff.
According to who? The people, like the science?
According to the evidence.
That's what I'm saying. If there's gaps in the scientific timeline, just as you say, there's like biblical timeline and stuff. It could be millions of years, sure, whatever. But what I'm saying is there's something off with the timeline.
It's not millions of years for Göbekli Tepe.
Sure. Yeah.
It is older than anything we thought should have existed.
Yeah. No, I'll give you that. But I'm just saying that the things, for me personally, things check out. You say it's a homeschool way of thinking.
How come you can make fun of me all day long, but if I throw in like that little joke, you get offended?
Oh, no, you're not just making fun of me. You're making fun of every person that was homeschooled. Regular schooling, if anything, has its own propaganda built in there as well.
It totally does. All school does.
Yeah. So regarding whatever anyone was taught, personally, if I have a theory on something, it can't just be bad because I was homeschooled.
It wasn't. You're taking it. I was a joke.
I'm standing up for homeschoolers worldwide. We're not all idiots.
Now, am I going to get slapped?
You are. Hold on. No. No.
I was just talking about homeschoolers, man.
I get it. Yeah. And there's a bunch of homeschoolers probably listening to this show.
And I'm not.
That are fans of yours, Christian, or listeners of yours.
Here's
and you should say, hey, I'm sorry, homeschoolers. I think you're smart as well.
I think so.
Okay. There you go.
Giants do not have to be biblical. Let's leave it at that. We should not always get into a biblical conversation.
No, I called it from the jump. I was like, this is probably going to go somewhere.
We can't get in. If we're going to do more giants, it just has to be giants. They don't have to come from the Bible.
Okay. So now you just 100% your way then. I get it.
No, we can be like, we just shouldn't argue about it.
Yeah. No, like that's the thing. Even what we're talking about right now, I don't feel like we're arguing.
No.
I feel like you have a point that you're trying to get across to me, and I have a point that I'm trying to get across to you. And it's not even like, it's more of a debate than us being like, you're fucking wrong. I hate you.
If you want me to prove giants are real,
you have to believe that God has nothing to do with it. Otherwise, because I got you.
I'm going to be pulling a lot of giant stuff out of ancient stories, out of ancient history, because at that time point, it's not quite as tainted as our modern times.
Nice.
Now it's like anything can be a conspiracy or a subject we would talk about.
Sure.
But this one has a lot of meat behind it in ancient times, to the point where Marvel is basically making films about like ancient aliens that have helped guide us. And sometimes they look like giants.
Propaganda, but sure. Yeah.
I mean, when you look at comic book stories, a lot of those stories are based in myth and stories that are ageless.
Yeah.
And that's what some of this is, the hero story. And just because they're Marvel doesn't mean they're not based on a fact of the past. And in a lot of cases, we see that they are.
Yeah.
When they have one of the Marvel's most popular characters is Thor, that's a Norse god.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're bringing in other gods. The Eternals are gods.
Moon Knight
is now a god. Or
who is that Seth or is that Osiris?
It's Khonshu is the god in this.
Khonshu?
Yeah.
I don't think I've even heard that.
It's not very well. He's not very well known.
Poor guy.
But he is one of the gods, I guess. There, the Amit is not a god, but is after your heart has been judged against the weight of a feather, if you're deemed, not good, Khonshu eats your heart. Or not Khonshu, Amit eats your heart.
As is tradition.
Yeah. These gods in Marvel are based on ancient gods, and they've been written about for years, because Stan Lee put this together. Moon Knight is not a new character. It's just new to the screen.
Yeah.
And I love the way they base it on human mythology, because I think that's easier to tell stories and connect all these different things to our ancient past that maybe we've let be dictated to us in a more of a propaganda way through the years, because it's become part of religion and politics to tell these stories. And a lot of times those stories are misused to prop up a king or, maybe a Catholic priest
or a queen. We're not saying,
or a belief in certain areas of different religions. Those things are used as tools. But in the case of the Solomon Islands, we're talking giants that you could probably go find now if this story is true.
Yeah, and I feel it in my heart to be true. That sounds like it was all, nothing was too like grandiose about anything. It was all like just mellow enough where you're like, damn, that sounds like it could happen.
Yeah.
So
and now that the islands are going to be used, And the author who made it sound like the George Bush government pushed the government of Australia at the time to get involved and kind of take over parts of these islands as a peacekeeping mission. So
that would check out.
But there's like the part of the UFO that we're going to get into in the summer episode is kind of fascinating, which would be a reason why Western governments might take over. Yeah. Also, the fact that they have gold and oil there might be a reason. And if they have giants, we already know that Western and Eastern, any kind of military power wouldn't mind having the DNA of a giant to mix with the DNA of their soldiers.
Hey, we've all seen the super soldier stories play out. So yeah, there's a lot to digest. It was a good episode, though. I enjoy talking about giants. This is part 2 of many.
Yeah,
there's
I
so
still
many
have a couple
stories.
Other ones I want to talk about, but this one jumped to the front of the list because there's some good stuff. Mangoes and the half-caste kid was crazy.
That is pretty crazy.
We could talk all day just about that part of the story.
Yeah, and we should find some corroborating stories with the Bigfoot that apparently kidnapped and impregnated like a couple women too. I think that'd be interesting.
And maybe it wasn't a Bigfoot; it was a giant. But
giant Bigfoot.
We've argued for years, or that nobody really knows what giants look like, so they could be very hairy. A Bigfoot theoretically would be closely related to a human.
Yeah.
So, and it could be a giant. In other words.
True.
You know, I mean, the 2 girls kidnapped by giants from Lighton, those were giants, but they were also Bigfoot.
Yeah.
When we talked about that on YouTube. So.
Sure. Yeah, go check that out. And for the 4th time, I'm going to try to close this episode out because it's stretching on a little bit. Fun episode, but.
I'll shut up.
Yeah, let's try that. Shout out to Christian for putting this episode together. Very well done. Everyone seems to enjoy your episode, so you're doing something right.
Oh, nice.
That's well done. And so I guess we'll probably see part 4 or part 3 at some point in season 3.
Yeah. Do you remember recently you were like, are you going to write your episodes from like a skeptic's point of view?
Yeah, I do remember that.
But they don't really. I just put them together because they're fun.
I was speaking the fear of the people. I was making sure the people were going to be entertained.
Do you still feel fearful of future episodes? I just throw this stuff out there.
It depends on what the subject is. It depends. Like if it's still people that are a little butthurt about Parsons, but there are people that also enjoyed the episode. So
that's fair because that's a scary individual from certain ways of thinking. I really do understand that.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important for us to talk about things like that too, though, because we make things scary.
Yeah.
But in the end, he wasn't that scary.
Yeah. And going in for part 5 of closing this episode out, guys, I appreciate you tuning in to yet another week of the Freaky Deaky with the boys. And I hope you enjoyed. If you have your own theories on giants or Bigfoot or whatever you feel like we talked about in this episode, if it resonates with you in some kind of way, reach out to us. We love hearing from you guys on Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff, all the fun stuff. Make sure you're subscribing on YouTube to the Freaky Deaky Podcast, where we have bonus stories lined up just all summer long on Fridays. We got extended 10-minute previews on Wednesdays. We're going to possibly start mixing in some other stuff on Mondays, but we're just having a good time with it. If there's anything that you would like to hear us cover on the YouTube channel, feel free to write in at thegang@thefreakydeaky.com and we will get back to you, or comment and let us know your thoughts. We're open to it. I'm going to regret this. Do you have any closing words, Christian?
Believe in giants.
Believe in giants. We're there. It only took two episodes about giants for Christian to believe. We did it, folks. It actually only took 1 episode, but here we are at episode 2, and he's a believer. So everyone celebrate. Go back, listen to part 1 in season 1, episode 3. That'll do. Good night. We'll see you next week, right here on the Freaky Deaky. Goodbye.